Spring sports are in full swing around the Fredericksburg area. We'll cover all the top stories in this week's award-winning Varsity 360 right now. Mark Coleman here from the Virginia Varsity Sports Network, and this is our look at the week's top stories in Fredericksburg area high school sports. We call it Varsity 360. You can find us right here at fredericksburg.com, and I am always happy to be joined by my very favorite members from the Freelance Star team. They are the FLS Varsity crew, or at least part of them. It is Mr. Justin Rice and Mr. Nathan Warters. Fellas, good to see you.
Long time.
It has been a while.
We missed you, man. We missed you.
It's good to be back, though, huh?
It is good to be back.
Feels like old home week or something like that around here. Well, hey, you guys sort of cleaned up in the Virginia Press Association Awards recently. Congratulations on that.
We had a good week, and so did you. Virginia Varsity 360 is now officially an award-winning show. We appreciate the watchers and
absolutely.
So on.
Yeah, it's good time. Some really talented folks that I get to spend some quality time with. So it's always a pleasure for me. And we've got a really fun show talking about spring sports.
Let's get into it,
Let's get into it. Here's the hometown barbershop look at baseball. North Stafford seems to be the hot team from the area, 11-3 on the season. They've been doing some damage against some Conference 4 schools.
A lot of talented guys back for this team. Ian Pape, of course, is going to go to Randolph-Macon next year and play. You know, Kevin Wilhan and Justin Cherry and Austin Meyer, of course, Ryan Kennedy. They've got a lot of talented players back. The conference slate still to come. They're going to kick off on May the 1st, and that's going to be when they play the meaningful games against Potomac and Freedom and Massaponax and Brook Point and Mountain View. But Wolverines looking pretty strong so far.
Recent wins this past week, 11-1 victory, huge victory over Florin Forge. They preceded that with a 10-5 victory over Riverbend. Forge a pretty strong team, though.
Yeah, that 11-1 score is kind of shocking. You see that Forge loses by that margin, but still a really strong team. They had a big 12-7 win over Mountain View recently. Michael Nichols is hitting over 600, had a big home run in that game. Their Conference 4 slate begins April 30th against Woodbridge, and that's kind of when they need to get everything in gear at that point. But they're a strong team, and they'll be a contender there.
A very interesting stat line, impressive stat line, I guess, from a game earlier this week from Riverbend. Riverbend has been bouncing right around 500 all season. A little bit of a down year for them. They had a 2-1 victory over Brook Point. Jacob Benfield with a big pitching line, though. He got the complete game victory, gave up 4 hits, 12 strikeouts in that victory. That's 12 strikeouts, whatever level you're at.
12 strikeouts is a big number, yeah.
That's a lot of numbers. Yeah. Let's take a look at softball around the area. Mountain View has been a very impressive team, 10-1 on the season. A big victory, extra inning victory over Florin Forge recently.
Yeah, Mountain View with Taylor back on the mound. Taylor's been really strong for them pitching-wise. I think offensively is maybe her strong suit, but of course, that gives them a piece to build around. And Mountain View is 10-1. I know that last year in the postseason it didn't go their way. Then they've got sort of hopes of erasing that and remaking it. Brook Point will be the team that stands in their way, especially in Conference 15. Brook Point is, I think, a surprise 7-1. They got a bunch of freshmen sort of built around some returning seniors. Chelsea Brooks was an all-area catcher from last year, and Lacey Chambers was an all-conference pick at third base. And then they've got a bunch of young players, but then they're getting good contributions from Cheyenne Hooker, had a 3-run homer against in a 13-2 win against Stafford last week. And so Brook Point and Mountain View, they're going to play on May the 1st, the actual counts in the conference game. That's going to be a good one.
It should be a good one, and those are the games that matter. It's good to have records and to build things up until the play against the conference. Those are the games that
absolutely. And how they've set up the conference standings or the conference schedule is it's going to be at the end of the year where you're suddenly going to play 6 games in a row, and they're all going to be conference games. Yeah.
Well, speaking of conferences, how's Conference 22 shaping up?
Well, 22 I think is kind of an interesting softball conference. It was really well balanced last year and really competitive. And this year, maybe the local teams have taken a step back a little bit. King George, to me, is still a team you look at and go, this team's going to come around. They were very good last year with Ashley Knowles on the mound. She was very strong, and they've been sort of up and down. There's still time for them to turn it around. Of course, in Conference 22, almost all the games count. They're going to play each other twice, so you're falling behind, but you're still going to get to that conference tournament and have a chance. And then in Conference 27, let's not forget Spotsylvania. Spotsylvania, very good this year. A real good chance to make noise at 27.
Lots of good softball around the area.
Absolutely.
There is some good soccer being played around the area. Let's start with the boys and look at Conference 4. Some good games being played there.
Yeah, I think two of our better teams in the area are nestled there in Conference 4. Colonial Forge, Riverbend, both really strong so far. Forge only has one loss. They lost to a really good Mountain View team, and they beat Riverbend, but Riverbend's got a really good record so far right now as well. So I'm really thinking both those teams will be strong contenders for the title in Conference 4 this year.
Mountain View in Conference 15, that's the team to watch.
Mountain View seems to be really giving those Conference 4 teams a run for their money, the bigger schools. So Mountain View, the boys seem to really be doing well. Conference 22's got some good action going on as well, though.
Yeah, Cortland's back up top there. Another really strong team. Chancellor looks strong as well. Cortland hasn't lost yet, and they're coming off a win over Massaponax, a 3-0 win over Massaponax, and Ponax won a lot of games last year. And Cortland's also relying on some new goal scorers this year. George Cheatham, I think we all know him as the 1,000-yard rusher. He's one of their leading scorers this year, so that's kind of a cool element too. Them getting some extra scoring there from him.
And this Cortland team, perennial powerhouses, and did they make the state championship
Chancellor
games?
made the state semifinal last year, so you're going to look for the Chargers.
That's right. Okay.
And it's the Chancellor-Cortland soccer rivalry is definitely one of the best soccer rivalries in the area.
Yeah.
Those two teams have been competitive against each other on the same level sort of for a long, long time.
Chancellor suffered an early loss, and they bounced back really good. They had a big 8-0 win over King George last week, so it looked for both those teams to be strong, down the stretch.
Conference 22 tournament going to be very, very good. Yeah.
Good stuff, always in boys soccer. We've seen some good action on the girls soccer side as well, and no surprise here, Cortland has put together a pretty good season already.
Yeah, it seems like every year they're right there, dominating again. They're 7-0 right now, and coming off a couple of shutout wins. The last one over James Monroe by a 10-0 score. They're balanced. They have a lot of talent. They have, I believe it's 2 Division I girls. They might have more than that, and they have several other girls that are playing at the next level. So a veteran balanced team, they're going to be hard to deal with.
I mean, that's the Cortland story, though. That's been the Cortland story the last couple of years. They've been very, very good. I know the Cougars are going to measure themselves in the postseason and see what they can do. I mean, there's a hump that they want to get back over. They used to be a state tournament, a state semifinal, state finalist very consistently. They want to get back to that level.
7-0 on the season thus far. We don't celebrate the blowout victories here. It was a 10-0 victory over James Monroe, but an interesting little storyline here. 10 different players, 10 different Cortland Cougars scored in this game. That's a pretty uncommon feat, I would say.
I think it's a measure of how much talent and depth they have.
That's awfully deep to be able to perform something like that. Mountain View, we talked about the Mountain View boys. The girls have an awfully good team as well.
And I think they're 5-1-2, and I think they're getting better. Jensen Markheim and Erica Tomeko are 2 of their standout players. They're still out injured. They expect them back. They did lose Erin Black as a key player for them. They lost her for the season, and now they've got Amari Hopkins as a good young and up-and-coming player for them. And I think Mountain View girls in Conference 15, maybe the team we're talking about.
And they also have a Division I goalkeeper in Cece Kepler.
Cece Kepler, yeah.
Very good. Let's turn our attention now to lacrosse. And how about we start with the girls? Colonial Forge, a pretty strong team from the area.
Yeah, lacrosse is still relatively new to the area on the girls' side. I think Forge is a step ahead of most of the teams in the area, and they're off to a really good start this year, coming off a big win over Mountain View last week. At this point, they're really trying to kind of take the steps necessary to get really competitive come playoff time when they're facing off teams that aren't from this area, that aren't in only year 2 of their existence. So that's what they're working on at this point, getting ready for playoff time, getting ready for some of the tougher teams they're going to face come region playoffs.
And they were the best girls team in the area last year, right? A little disappointing, right, how the playoffs went down. That's sort of my understanding.
Yeah, and I think that was just a function of playing teams that they hadn't seen before. You play a bunch of teams that are only in their first year of existence. It's going to be, they lost 21-6 to Patriot earlier this season, and they've got that in the back of their minds. Okay, the Patriot's going to be one of those kind of teams that we're going to have to play against in the playoffs, and I think that's what they're really working towards, getting polishing things up and getting ready for those kind of games.
Yeah. That's one of those things that I like about sports, though, is seeing a new sport that's evolving. And these are pioneers here. We had the Stafford girls here last year. There's a smattering of kids who have been playing lacrosse for years, and then there are field hockey players and others who have just come out, and maybe the first time they've ever held a lacrosse stick, and they're playing on the same field on a varsity game. And so it's there's some diversity, I guess, in talent sets. But it's exciting for me to see this evolve. I'm happy for the girls that they get a chance to do this, and I think it's fun to be able to see.
And it's impressive how good they've been. I mean, a lot of teams in the area are good, and we've got a lot of girls that are getting tabbed for All-American honors, going to showcase events and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of those girls play club lacrosse, but we've just got a lot of talent in the area, and a lot of these teams are doing way above what I would have expected in only year two of the program's existence.
Yeah. So. Good times. Yeah. On the boys' side, we've got some very strong teams playing as well. Brook Point is undefeated on the season.
Yeah, 6-0, coming off of a 12-1 win over Colonial Forge. Colonial Forge has been kind of the class of the area when it comes to boys lacrosse. So Brook Point, that's a huge win for them. They have another game with Colonial Forge coming up, and I think it's a couple weeks. I can't remember what the day was, but they've got a game against them. It looks to be their toughest matchup from here on out. So look for Brook Point to be one of the strong teams at the end of the year, probably a playoff contender.
It's been turning into a recurring theme here. Brook Point and Mountain View, we've mentioned them several times. There's something here about the spring sports for these two schools. They seem to really have.
Two teams having very good spring, I think.
How about that?
Sports. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Interesting. Let's take a quick look at tennis around the area, and we will start with the boys. Nathan.
Stafford's undefeated, which is a really impressive feat for the Stafford boys because they graduated 3 of their top 6 from last year, so they got a reshuffle lineup, still undefeated, beat Colonial Forge, and Forge is a pretty strong team as well. So, they're looking to make that move and go to the region playoffs again this year with a team that is quite different from last year.
Retooled.
You can't forget Conference 27 and James Monroe, also undefeated, 8-0. Number 1 Marshall Wood is a kid we could be seeing deep into the 3A post-state tournament. Jam, George Christopherato's, those guys keep rolling every single year, replacing a bunch of guys. They mix in some tennis players with some athletes. Kendrick Wilkins is their backup quarterback receiver. He's playing number 3 for him this year. Jam with another good team on the boys' side.
Wood also recently had a victory against Culpeper's Dylan Christensen, and Christensen was a state semifinalist last year. So, as Justin said, Marshall Wood could be in for a pretty long season this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. How about on the girls' side?
Forge is undefeated. They have a newcomer, Michaela Cunny at number 1. I believe she's a freshman, Justin.
Yeah, she's a freshman transfer, and I'll tell you what, you talk about somebody, if you're paying attention to the tennis, this is somebody who should probably excite you a little bit. There's some decent players in Stafford County. I know Josie Gresco from Stafford is our reigning player of the year. Even Colonial Forge is number 2. Jessica Sudworth was a number 1 for Forge last year, and Michaela has moved in, and she's beaten Gresco. Of course, she edged out Sudworth, playing number 1 for them. I know Colonial Forge is looking ahead sort of to Forest Park. It's a big Conference 4 matchup that'll be coming up down the road for the Eagles, and that's a big one. And even among our successful 6A tennis teams, they haven't had a lot of team and individual success beyond the region level.
Right.
It'd be interesting to see if adding a number 1 like that, who's clearly a very, very good player, what that's going to do for Forge and how it's going to change them in the postseason.
Now, an area school that has had some tennis success at both the singles and doubles level is James Monroe, and the girls are potentially just as good as the boys, as good as we were talking about there. The girls are equally strong.
Yeah, they're 8-0. Only dropped 4 of their 68 matches. That's pretty impressive, and only 2 of those were singles. So they're off to a really strong start, matching the boys' success as well.
Started the season without Palouse at number 1. She was injured. She's coming back now and is playing now number 1. They've only gotten better.
Now, how about Cortland? They've got another strong team there as well.
Yeah, Cortland's very similar to Stafford. You kind of looked at their roster early in the year and you say, who are these people? There's a lot of new girls on the team, a lot of new girls in key positions, and they've really taken off and done really well. They beat Fauquier earlier in the season. Fauquier was reigning state semifinalist, and they've got another match with them coming up. I think it's May 6th So good so far, and they got some tough matches coming up, but really impressed with what they've been able to do.
Megan Amrine playing number 1 for the Cougars, and sort of an underrated athlete. She was a 3-point shooter for the girls basketball team a couple years ago when they were making a run to the state tournament, and now plays number 1 singles for the tennis team and is having a good year.
It's interesting to see how the athleticism relates to the different sporting activities, the sporting events, basically. Yeah. So,
Sure.
How about Eastern View? We haven't really said much about them during this episode.
Well, they're going to be one of those teams that contends with Cortland on the girls' side. They're 8-2, having a good year as well, and they're going to be a team that I think gives Cortland maybe it pushes them a little bit.
Good stuff. Exciting times around the tennis scene as well.
Yeah, I think so, especially with Michaela Cunny at Colonial Forge. I think it transforms what 6A tennis in Stafford County can be. We'll see. She can live up to that promise.
All right. That is going to do it for this week's installment of Varsity 360. It has been a pleasure. Certainly appreciate your viewing time, and I appreciate the time put in by my very good friends from the Fredericksburg Freelance Star and the FLS Varsity team. Justin Rice, Nathan Warters, fellas, it's always a blast.
We're friends again.
We have always been friends.
That's special.
Despite whatever you may be reading about in the newspaper. Nathan, true?
That's so good. I'm so glad y'all are back together again.
It's a busy time around the sports department, though, right?
Absolutely, and it's starting to heat up.
NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, Major League Baseball going on, NFL draft coming up next week.
High school conference tournaments coming up very soon. I don't know what you're talking about.
Spring football. It is a fun time to be a sports fan, and the high school stuff certainly makes it just that much more enjoyable. But you guys are busy, and I certainly know that. They work hard. They really do. They play hard too, but they're good folks. Appreciate their time. And I appreciate your time. Hey, don't forget to check out Hometown Barbershop and say hi to Mary and Lynn. Let them know that you saw them on Varsity 360. And until next time, for the very good folks from the Varsity 360 Virginia Varsity Sports Network, my name is Mark Coleman. Thanks for watching.